Complete decades. Well and running, baby. Complete decades. Well and running, baby. Complete decades. Well and running, baby. Complete decades. Well and running, baby.
Hello and welcome back to the Complete Tech Heads podcast with me, Tom Edwards. This is episode 3. So if you've stuck with me this far, then thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. So this week I am talking to Alex Sellers. So Alex is a tech marketing leader. He is currently the head of marketing at Klyk, which is a sustainable circular economy tech company. So we talk about that a bit. He's also been at various different sort of early stage tech brands that many of you will already know. So Ribbon, Trint, Eye Candy, Incorporo. He's been kind of all over the various sort of early stage startup, VC backed startup world of the London technology sector. So it kind of works very much in a similar industry to me, and I really love tech generally, and so I found it a really interesting conversation. We talk about all sorts of different stuff. So we kind of started off on that London tech scene, but then we kind of go on to talk about the marketing landscape generally, how you can best market startups on kind of limited budget, and then we also speak a bit about imposter syndrome and having to pretend to be an expert at various things as a kind of marketer in these agile companies. And then we cover AI quite significantly towards the end. So lots on that as well. And then finally, we do briefly discuss mentoring, which is how Alex and I know each other. We do a regular mentoring thing at a local school, so we talk a bit about that as well. It's something that I know we both very much enjoy. So without further ado, here is Alex Sellers. Alex, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you. Yes, happy to be here today.
So we obviously know each other pretty well already from our mentoring escapades, which I'm sure we will talk about in greater depth a bit later. But I wanted to kick off today asking you about the tech world, because you are obviously someone who's worked at various different tech startups, always, I think, in-house. I'm obviously an agency guy and kind of always have been. So I wanted to learn from you what you find interesting and exciting about the technology landscape. What got you into it in the first place?
100%. So in my early career, I played around in a couple of different industries at a couple of different companies, and grad roles, that kind of thing. And it was always the technology aspect of it that grabbed my attention more quickly than anything else. I'm originally from New Zealand, and when I moved to London 8 years ago, I had one pretty clear ambition about what I want to achieve professionally when I got here. Once more, not realizing that I was going to be here 8 years later. That's a whole other story, though. And that was to get myself embedded within the London tech scene, because it just has this amazing reputation. You see, the potential to do incredible things. So having picked up an initial contract role, I managed to get myself pretty fairly embedded within the startup scene. And it's something I love so much, just because you're really at the cutting edge of what's possible. You're playing around with technologies that when you mention to your friends, they have no idea what you're talking about. But then 5 years later, someone will always tap me on the shoulder and be like, isn't that something that you were doing half a decade ago? And it's now managed to get itself quite into the mainstream. So, you're always learning, you're always getting challenged, you're always having to make sure that you're updating your knowledge and, having no ego about what you do know and what you don't know.
So is that why you wanted to come to London then, because of the sort of thriving tech scene? Because I think being from London, you can kind of forget that sometimes, that it does have this kind of global recognition as a center of kind of, tech and innovation. Was that part of your mindset at the time?
It probably wasn't my primary driver. My primary driver was like life experiences, but I'd say it's a very large part of the reason why I'm still here 8 years later. Initially coming for, travel, I was in my mid-20s, see what the other side of the world had to do. But yeah, definitely a big part of why I'm still here all these years later.
So I feel like in our in our lines of work, there's a lot of kind of mythology around how you market tech companies. I think a lot of people think that you just can throw money at Google endlessly and just have endless growth, and then that builds a brand, right? And that's, and there's also a lot of kind of like astrology around some of the demand gen tactics, people pretending like they know a lot more maths than they really do, and that kind of stuff. Like, where do you most frequently see tech marketing going wrong, and how do you elevate beyond that just kind of typical growth marketing pattern of throwing money at everything?
That's a really interesting question. So, I mean, predominantly I work with younger companies, who, to my opinion, have the potential, like they look like they're about to have the ability to achieve something special. And so, at that stage, when you're at companies that are, quite often pre-Series A, early stage, it's about making sure the company really understands what it's selling and who it's selling to. So, I'm a very big
and not
advocate
getting carried away with their own hubris, I guess, and like being a bit humble about it.
Yeah, and I mean, you see so many of these younger companies coming out with, they come in completely different industry, but talking, like, introduce themselves the exact same way, like, we are the world's leading, we have this cutting edge, and that kind of jargon, which people just gloss over these days. And it's about getting back to the actual fundamental understanding of why you've been created, what you're there to achieve, and who you're there, like what problem you're there to solve.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the big problem that I see is businesses not actually understanding who they're selling to, what they're about, and what problem they're there to achieve. Working closely with founders, some founders are fantastic at knowing the limitations and knowing what the product can do in this moment. But founders are a special breed of character by the very nature of what they're setting out to achieve. It takes a very driven and ambitious human to go and do what they're trying to do. So quite often, with that ambition and with that natural drive and enthusiasm, they'll start talking about their product in a way that it might be true 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Right.
But it's not solving the problem that they're there to solve right now. And it's about really going into conversations with no ego, stripping it back, and make sure that you're getting the basics right. So that is really doing a lot of research on the customer, understanding what the problem is, and making sure you're speaking to people right there in the now. And yeah, I'm a very big believer in making sure that the necessary positioning workshops and frameworks are being put into place before you actually go out there and start to spend and start trying to scale, because you've got to make sure that every single pound, especially in a young company where budgets might be tighter, is earning its right to be spent, and that's on a recurring basis.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's easy to get hooked on the drug of demand gen marketing as well, right? Like it's easy to plug it in and then be afraid to unplug it, right? Whereas I think with storytelling and building a brand in the kind of the way that I suspect you and I would both recommend, ideally you want to get to a position where you could switch it off and you wouldn't just die, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, quite often I'm the only marketer, not in my current company, but quite often I am the only marketer. And especially when you're building a marketing infrastructure for the first time, you want to make sure that if you go on holiday, I go back to New Zealand once a year. I want to make sure that when I go back to New Zealand for 2 weeks, the entire marketing infrastructure doesn't just stop or is all of a sudden unmanaged. You still want to have that machine operating in the background.
So you said, so when we spoke about doing this, you said something that I thought was quite interesting, which was that you are pretending to be an expert at things often, and obviously, you're an expert marketer, but I feel like I could kind of associate with that because, and I guess when you are the only marketer, you probably are wearing a million different hats, and you kind of do have to pretend like you know a lot about various different things, right? Like, I thought that was an interesting way of putting it. Is that how you think of your role when you are the only marketer?
I'd definitely say so, and I think this is something that can tie in back into earlier stages of my career, especially when I went from bigger companies into the more of the startup world. But it's even broader than that, I think, in that a tech marketer, our skill set, can jump industry to industry pretty easily, and you just need to slot yourself in and get yourself up to speed. And it's every time I join a new industry, whatever it might be, just making sure that you get yourself knowledgeable as quickly as you can on that. And a lot of that is faking it till you're making it.
Yeah,
Going
yeah,
back a
100%.
step, yeah, going back a step further from that as well. I mean, I've suffered from imposter syndrome a lot throughout my career, and I think a big part of that was down to when I first decided to take the step from bigger corporate life, when I was in my early 20s and always in the back of meetings if I got invited at all. Then I took the step into going to a young startup where I was at just turned 25 and the most experienced marketer in the room, and in all of the meetings with directors. And I mean, I'd had about 2 years, maybe just over 2 years of experience at that stage. And when I'm beginning called the expert marketer, and I'm just there like, I have no idea what's going on right now. And it's making sure that even if you're feeling quite insecure, I always just thought if I projected confidence in this, that and I can get to this meeting, then I'm going to go back to my desk and I'm going to desperately like read all I can and make sure I upskill myself so that next time they ask me this, I can be the expert on that specific subject.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Like, so we talk a fair bit about imposter syndrome, and like I don't think I've ever really had it, and that sounds like quite a sort of big-headed thing to say, but I kind of feel like it's not because I've ever thought that I'm that great. I think I've always just had this deep belief that everybody else is faking it till they make it as well. Like I've always, especially people with an entrepreneurial mindset, that basically is the entrepreneurial mindset, right? It's like go and do it and then figure out what you did afterwards, or like make mistakes, move fast, break things, all of that stuff, right? I think my working assumption, especially in tech, was that basically that's what everyone's doing, right? Like everyone's just trying to figure it out. And like like in the bigger legacy companies, often you are, right? Like, so when I was I used to work in newspapers doing social at like the Telegraph and the Sun, and like I was only like 25 or something, and I hadn't been doing it long, but I probably was the expert on social media because everybody else was like 50, right? And they were all like newspaper people. So like, yeah, I think in the world that we inhabit, you do kind of learn to be an expert in inverted commas pretty swiftly, right? Like you do just have to figure it out as you go.
And it depends what expert means in any given context. I'm not about to write a PhD on any subjects, but am I going to be enough to get what needs to be accomplished to meet our objectives? Then yeah, 100%. So
like you say that you felt like you experienced imposter syndrome earlier in your career. Do you find that brings more empathy to your kind of like management style now if you're working with younger teams?
100%. I'd say a lot of my management style has come from previous. I've had great managers in my career, and I've had truly horrific managers. And I model myself as much off the bad managers about not replicating that experience as I do off the good managers. But the imposter syndrome as well. So I always say to younger members, and with a genuine belief, like there is no stupid question. And then I try to prove that by if I'm new to an industry now, and imposter syndrome is not such a thing for me at this stage, over a decade into my career. And I'm in a new industry, and I'll just ask any question, despite how obvious it can be, just so that they can really see that there is no ego about this. There's nothing to be embarrassed by it. Just because you've been in marketing for 2 years, you should definitely not have all the answers at this stage. So it's really just making sure that everyone knows that it's a safe space, basically, to help develop and grow.
Well, it's that old thing, right, where like if usually there are at least 2 or 3 other people in the room thinking the same thing, exactly, but they don't want to say it, right? And I think the more experienced you are, often that can make people less inclined to ask stupid questions because they feel like they really should know it by now. But yeah, I'm very much an advocate of asking stupid questions. maybe it doesn't make me that well cut out to be a podcast host. I don't know, but yeah, definitely with you on that one. So a bit more then about solo marketing, plotting a career in tech. Like, what would be your advice to somebody trying to get into the world that you got into 10 years ago? How do you go about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll try and make it not. I love the world that I've ended up into, so I'm not going to try and make this sound too painful because there is a certain masochistic nature that's involved with going down this road. But I mean, honestly, I can't count the amount of times that I've been in a business. I've been like, okay, this is the last early stage business I'm going to. I'm off to go join a corporate afterwards. But it's about it kind of gives you endless opportunities to go and do something, because you can be very specific around what exactly is that you're chasing. And there's so many businesses out there that are looking for marketers at an early stage that are going to be willing to take more of a chance on people. And it's not about waiting until you see a job advert that pops up, or a LinkedIn ad. It's really about going out there and making things happen, I find. So I mean, the first startup that I had was literally just about, I saw some connections with a company that looked really interesting, and I just went and hit those connections that I had in LinkedIn, and I was just asking them, do you think there's going to be some way that we can make this happen? And it turned into something that I was there for several years and actually managed to, start embedding myself within the tech scene. The next way that I've plotted my way through there probably isn't the most recommended, and it's something in hindsight I think I'll go about changing. But I've always, after initially getting in, for a long time, I wasn't really so much focused on the specific industry that I was going into. I was more focused on what the role was and how I'd be able to step up into that slightly more senior role, that slightly bigger salary, the slightly more senior role. And that has probably, if I'm being completely candid, led to several career mistakes that I've made through the years. Whereas in more recent years, I've really been taking the time to say, is this a company and industry that's going to potentially align with my personal values and something I'm going to be able to find interesting? Because so much of the time when you're a solo marketer or you're the only person, you've got to have such curiosity and thirst for learning everything about you. Otherwise, you're going to be missing all the best stories, and you're not going to be able to connect with the people that you're trying to sell to on any level beyond the superficial the surface level knowledge of what you want to be reaching.
Yeah. So you would say pick on industry first. That's the most important thing to look for, is an industry that aligns with your personal values.
I'd definitely say as you develop and you get the chance to have more, you're bringing more knowledge, more of a skill set into the businesses. I'd say definitely take a step, and if you have the luxury, of being able to really plot your path and take the time to find something. In your junior years, yeah, it can be a bit harder to do that, and sometimes you just have to take the role as it comes. But yeah, definitely as you develop a bit more in there.
Great. Right. So now I would like to talk to you about AI, which is, I think, the thing that is obsessing my brain, but more than anything else. I feel like it's the only thing I think about these days, is all of the various different possibilities. When we last spoke about AI, you were talking about how it's done basically a shitload of work really quickly. So, like, what are you using it for? Where's it most effective? What's your take?
So the first thing I'll say on this is, I mean, the last 12 months has kind of just been like, what's just happened? Because for so long in the tech world, including some of the businesses I've been at, we've claimed the marketing line of our AI-powered technology, AI-powered this, AI-powered that.
Man, I know so many of those. Jesus, yeah.
I mean, I'm
crazy,
sure you've seen it countless times. And I actually just started thinking of AI as some marketing buzzword that I actually banned from being used within our business.
You got to fake it till you make it, Alex, right? That's the...
But it got so empty. And then, I mean, the one shining example of just like, wow, what's just happened was ChatGPT launched.
Yeah.
And they actually launched on Product Party the day before I launched, not Product Party, sorry, on Product Hunt, the day before I launched a product on Product Hunt. So kind of monopolized all attention that went towards it, because it was just like, oh my God, what's happened? And that really, I mean, I've always felt like I kept pretty up to date with my marketing tech stack. I had the tools that I liked, I'd always be exploring other things.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, I was like, dear God, if I don't, really make a massive effort over the next few months to re-educate myself, reevaluate my tech stack, and get on top of it, I'm going to be out of a job in 5 years. Because I think we've talked about this as well, Tom. But if you're for people like us at our age, if we don't keep on top of it, we're going to get replaced by it. So
Yeah.
it's making sure that we are the absolute experts in it to be able to, guide it, prompt it, and get the best out of it. But I mean, you must have seen it with the work that you're doing as well. It's just that the change that's happened in the landscape of the last 12 months is quite staggering, and it's still something that I'm trying to make sure I keep myself on top of.
Sure. So what are you using it for? So let's take ChatGPT first. I don't know if you're using AI like text to image or text to video, but let's take ChatGPT or in fact, first of all, what are you using? Are you using ChatGPT or Bard or what?
So I do have a ChatGPT license, but I don't use it in a work capacity just because of the various security concerns that do come around it. I love it. I use it to plan holidays in my personal life, but I actually went about finding a technology that was going to be built on GPT, but that was going to have the more security credentials around it for sensitive information.
Okay.
So I've come across a platform called Jasper AI, which is built on GPT-4.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, you've mentioned this to me
phenomenal.
before. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
So
tell me about it.
for people that haven't used it, it's basically, they call themselves like a writing assistant tool. And you can use it in a very similar capacity that you use GPT for to ChatGPT to. It has built-in templates, like every kind of template you can imagine. In the click of a heartbeat, you can build entire campaigns around things. And once more, with anything to do with AI, you're going to get the better outputs the more you put into it. So you can really train it, educate it, and once more, unlike GPT, actually, it has the knowledge to remember your previous instructions, your previous tone of voice. You can build that into the program. But with
Nice.
this tool, we have two of us in our marketing team at my current role. I honestly think that we've got the output of what it would have taken 8-9 people to have done a decade ago when I started my career, and that is incredibly exciting. And also quite scary for people that are coming into their career, though I'm sure they're going to be, masters at AI in a level that you and I don't quite understand. But
Probably.
it's
Yeah.
quite a revolutionary tool that has drastically changed the workflow of what my day-to-day looks like at the moment.
And so is this across everything? Is this like social on the website, like, I don't know, print material? I don't know whether you're doing any, I don't know whether you're printing anything. Like, is anyone anymore? I don't know. But are you using it just like across the board, basically?
So yeah, we're a sustainable company, so we're very paperless, but
Okay, yeah,
basically
of course.
across the board. So I mean, there's instances I can kind of give an example of how my workflow's changed so drastically now compared to what it would have been,
Yeah.
even 5 years ago.
Yeah,
And
go
that,
ahead.
I mean, so some of the startups I've worked at have had larger budget where we've worked with a lot of agencies. And quite often, you've got a brief for a campaign, you work with your agency, and a week and a half later, they'll come back with the initial lot of work for you that you'll then go through, workshopping and figuring out how you're going to activate this into the market. With a program like Jasper and built on a platform like ChatGPT, it's got the capabilities of, I can put my brief into this tool, and within 10 minutes, it's going to come out with not the final version of work, but 80% of what the work of the final work would look like. So, I mean, I am a content guy. That's always been my background. So within 10 minutes, I can get all of this stuff, the social posts, blog posts, Google ads, LinkedIn posts, all of that, just all there written. I'm also a big fan of Grammarly. I'll stick that into Grammarly, work it over myself, fine tune points here and there, tighten the copy up. And in almost no time at all, within a few hours, I can have all the assets ready for an entire campaign, ready to get out there to market. So the speed in which we're turning this around and being able to be, nimble and reflexive, and react quickly to any hot topics that might come up is night and day to what was capable just a few years ago.
Yeah, it makes me think, like, what the future of SEO even is, right? Because like you've got large language models producing SEO content now that have been trained on the sum total of all the other SEO content, right? And then are they just going to be like pumping, soup into more soup, right? Like, it's, I mean, a terrible analogy, but like, is it just going to become this kind of self-replicating beast? And I mean, are we even going to be, is creating SEO content even going to be an effective strategy in 5 years when we're using AIs increasingly more often. We're not even looking at search result, 10 blue links anymore. Like, I wonder, whether we're just kind of multiplying this SEO soup, which is going to become useless in like 5 years. I mean, I don't know. There's not really much of a question there, but like, what do you think? Like, how do you think?
I think you could do a whole podcast episode on that. It's not episode, series on that, full stop, just kind of exploring that topic, because it's, I mean, I see it in a whole bunch of marketing communities. It's something that people are definitely putting the thought into at the moment. My theory on where I think we're going to be in 5 years' time doesn't bode well for the way that content marketing exists right now. But I think the way that these AI models have exponentially increased in such a short amount of time, and I saw the founder of OpenAI kind of talking about just like how they don't quite understand how it's improving so quickly, and how they're actually looking at recreating the way that the models operate to be even more effective than they are right now. Is that I think that the AI model is going to be able to pull out the very best information straight away and just give it to people in an answer. So if you're not there, in effect, number one in the SEO spot right now, you're not going to get a look in for a whole bunch of the questions that are going to be asked. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to capitalize on it. If I did, I'd be an extremely rich person in 5 years' time. But it's something that a lot of thought's going to have to go from marketing teams, and agencies are going to have to be very nimble about. How about you? Do you have any theories on what you think it's going to look like?
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because you're probably right. AIs will just get to understand what you want really quickly, and so you might get to a point where we initially flood the internet with SEO content, and then all of a sudden everybody realizes that there's no point, because the AI isn't going to, if you don't hit the top spot in Google, or, well, not even Google, then then it just dies anyway. But then if that happens, then there's nothing to train the next large language models on, right? So it does make you sort of think that we are heading for a real paradigm shift, as in, content marketing as we know it probably won't exist like it does in 5 years' time, I don't think. But who knows what's going to replace it? Because if the incentive to create content disappears, then people will stop creating content, right? And so, like, how are you going to be found? I mean, it could potentially be a very lucrative opportunity for Bard, for ChatGPT to place ads in the AI, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I really don't know. It's a strange thought. And
I mean, just to actually show how far it's come along in the last 20, 25 years of the internet, what SEO used to be, when people kind of realized you can game the system to get yourself ranking up higher when the internet was still quite young, is that businesses would literally, in the Web 1 kind of version, where it was a lot of colors down the sides, they would just type the word in over. So, say if the word that they're after is podcast, they'd type podcast in 1,000 times, have it the same color as the font, same color as the background. And the search engine wasn't sophisticated enough that it was picking up on that. So if you even take that from where we are today to where we could potentially be, it's going to be another massive overhaul.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy. I mean, you do sort of think that there still has to be some place for search, right? I mean, I've got to assume that, because, like, I think part of the challenge that you'll have with AI going forward, and part of the challenge that I've found with it now, is that I don't always know everything I know when I'm looking for something. Like, there's a lot of nuance and context when I'm writing a prompt. Like, there's a lot of nuance and context that I'm just carrying around in my head that my internal monologue might not ever even have verbalized, but it's just context that I understand. And so it's very difficult to write. You can't prompt the entirety of your own knowledge, right? And so, like, it's difficult to know what it is that you're trying to get down until you've done it and then seen what comes back, and then you iterate and have a chat with the bot. So you don't always have like the whole story in the prompt. So I still feel like there's going to be some room for human agency in all of this for a while. And if there's room for human agency, then you need more than just one option, I think. I mean, Google has apparently been trying to get rid of, the 10 link page, results page for ages, but actually, people do scroll. It isn't like Google still hasn't got, it's not like you get the perfect response to your search query every single time. You do sometimes have to modify it. And so, there's no reason to think that AI will necessarily do any better. And that it's even if it gets more intelligent, the problem is at the human side, right? Like our prompts aren't going to be perfect. Perhaps for people that work in the industry, they might be, people that work with it every day, they would get better and better. But for your average consumer, I think, their prompting isn't going to be specific enough to get the exact thing that they want all the time. So yeah, it's a funny one. I really don't know where it's going to go.
We're safe for a few more years.
I think so.
Least,
I think we're safe. Yeah, I think we're safe. And I mean, look, there is also the idea that, new technologies, they spawn new jobs, right? People thought technology was going to wipe out all jobs like in the 60s. And all that happens is that every time there's a new tech revolution, a whole host of new things for people to do springs up that are generally more fun than the stuff that preceded them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what about text to image, text to video? Have you played with Midjourney at all, or Runway, or any of that stuff?
I was about to say Midjourney. I've only played with Midjourney, on a personal level. Haven't actually yet brought it into the workplace, but definitely something that I've talked about with other people at my company here. Text to video is a really interesting one. I mean, once more, you're creating videos so quickly with programs that cost so little money that 5-10 years ago, you'd have been going out to an agency and easily paying £3,000 to do. So there's one in particular that I quite like called Pictory. I'm not sure if you've come across it before.
I haven't. No, I've been using Runway for video. That's pretty good.
Runway. I haven't come across Runway. I'm sure it's probably quite similar in what they do. But
there's so many of them now. It's great. Like I feel like I'm constantly sprinting just to keep up with all of the AI news and doing a terrible job.
I mean, with Pictory, what you can do basically is when you've got your scripts done there, I mean, you could even put your script through a program like Synthesia, which is going to do in a very natural way a human voice, a very professional human reading of what you've just written. And then you can put that into Pictory, and it's going to be able to detect the different language that's been used throughout the script, and automatically put different stock video clips of a pretty high quality into that video that's just playing alongside it. From there, I mean, once more, I find I use the term 80% a lot with this, because I find that the AI gets you about 80% of the way. Yeah. And if there's any parts that you're not happy with, it's such a quick process just to go in, search for the image that's going to better suit what you're trying to get across there, play around with the length of how long it's going to appear on the screen, and bang, you're done. Hour and a half, you got yourself a video that would have been, a week and a half, 2 weeks turnaround at a cost of several £1,000s.
Well, it's interesting as well, because that 20% is like, that's the most important 20%, right? That's the bit that where you are bringing into play all of that context and nuance that I was talking about before, right? Like all of the sort of sum total of the things that you've learned. Like, I mean, I wonder if that 20% is actually what we're all going to be trading on, and we're all, we can just really, really good people, really creative people, and obviously as an agency guy, that's kind of what we're trading on, right? We're coming up with ideas and turning out interesting, new or different or exciting work. Like you can just deploy, whereas it would have taken you I don't know, a week if it's to produce a piece of content. You can now do that bit in just one day with that 20%, and then turn your creative attentions to the next thing and just exponentially increase your output whilst still having some recognizably human value add.
And really focusing with that 20%, you've got the base of it there. You're just spending your time on getting the quality, tightening the quality and like elevating how you're actually going about it. So yeah, I mean, at this point, that 20% is critical, I think.
I feel like we might be on the brink of coining some new business jargon here, like one of those sayings, like the AI 80, the AI 20%,
human 20.
Yeah, maybe not. It's hubris on my part, I think. But yeah, I mean, so anything else interesting in the AI world that you're thinking about at the moment?
With the AI world at the moment, I mean, right now, I'm quite new into this role. We've got so many things that we're working on right now. We're building positioning, we're building out this basic understanding infrastructure. So we're getting ourselves up.
Let's talk about Klyk. Because we haven't covered Klyk yet. So tell me about Klyk, you've been there not very long. What do you guys do?
So yeah, been here for just about 2 months now, and we're a circular tech company for environmentally conscious businesses. So I mean, every year there's 54 million tons of e-waste that's produced, a horrifyingly large amount of that by the business world. So we're helping businesses, reduce their carbon footprint in a very actionable and simple way forward. That's also, it's very cost effective. So we've got several different options of being able to purchase sustainable tech that has absolutely minimal carbon footprint at an incredibly high quality, something that I don't think I was quite appreciative of. If I heard the term refurbished computer 6 months ago, I'd have been like, well, I want a brand new one. But I see the quality this is coming out with, the savings that it has, and just understanding the actual impact that it has on the planet. And yeah, that's what we're at the moment. We're really just trying to make sure that we get a true understanding of the value that we're putting out there, so that we can, then put that out to market through our various campaigns and paid channels and all of that. So 2 months in, we're making good progress at the moment, leaning on the AI tools, but there's definitely a lot to do. But it's a very exciting role, this one.
Nice. So are you talking to me now from a refurbished laptop?
I am. This is not a refurbished one, but this is a sustainable laptop. So this is what's known as excess stock. So this is a brand new laptop that's never been used before, but it was of an older years model that Apple made too much of. So when they had their new model that went out, then this one all of a sudden becomes excess, and rather than going to waste, they'll sell to companies like ourselves that can then pass it on at a massive discount that is at a far lower carbon footprint than they'd be doing if they're buying the latest model.
Amazing. That's great. I didn't even realize that was a thing.
Neither had I, and this is this is part of the challenge at educating people like yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's why the world needs Klyk, right? Yeah, that's why you gotta be spreading the word. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is, I guess, a shared passion of ours, which is the mentoring we do. So we both work with a charity called Reach Out. Shout out to Reach Out if they're listening. And that's obviously how we met. But what made you get into the mentoring?
In my professional career, it's something that I really enjoy a lot. But there is when you're working in tech and you're bogged down in numbers and trying to stand out from competition, there's a human level of fulfillment that I really wasn't finding in the role. That if I was talking to my friends who are teachers and doctors and roles like that they talk about with such passion. So it was around the time of the pandemic, I started, putting the feelers out there and trying to find an extracurricular hobby that I could get into, where I felt like I'd really be able to contribute something back, because I feel like I'm in a very blessed position and that I've got a lot to offer. So when I came across the idea of mentoring, it was something that jumped out to me right away. I've always been a people person. I love working with younger people. And so started it at the same time that you did, I believe, which was in 2021. And became, one of the parts of the week that I look forward to the most. Just a few hours, but getting to work with these kids who are, just quite incredible. They got such life, such personality to them.
Great banter.
So great banter. I mean, they're incredibly smart. They all, hey, you and I are speaking one language. They all speak, 3, 4, 5 languages. And
it's mad, isn't it?
It's quite crazy.
Do you remember that time where they put us to shame? Where they this bit of a anecdote, but when we had to all line up by the number of languages that we speak, and it like with the most on one side and the least on the other, and it was just all the mentors on one side with like 7, and then all the mentees, on one side with like 7, and then all the mentors just standing there with like 1, like all blagging our GCSE French for 2, It was ridiculous.
Yeah, when you say 7 languages, it's not an exaggeration. I think that actually one of the kids actually does speak 7 languages.
Yeah,
and
mental. Absolutely crazy.
I'm sure it's the same for you, but just such a fulfilling and enjoying part, to build into the week and really try to give something back as well.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. And a good networking opportunity, as we're proving right now, right? So anyone listening, hit up Reach Out. They're always looking for mentors. It's exclusively a good thing, I would say. There's no downside, is there? It's
no downside at all.
So
it is. Yeah.
Good. Well, look, on that note, I think I'll wrap it up. But listen, Alex, thanks so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Lovely to see you again. And yeah, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, been a pleasure, and I'll see you at mentoring tomorrow night.
Yes, I'll see you at mentoring tomorrow night. Yeah, great, lovely.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Alex. Take
Cheers,
care.
John. Have a good one. Bye.
Complete dickheads.